All right, so today we have another news story. I want to continue to talk about the political realignment that's going on in the United States. We're going to start by looking at the state of Tennessee. So, from CNN, Tennessee House Representatives debating whether to expel three Democratic lawmakers by Dakin Andone, Ryan Young, and Amy Simpson. All right, so the Tennessee House of Representatives is debating the possibility of voting Thursday to expel three Democratic lawmakers, a week after they were accused of breaking House rules by protesting inside the chamber to call for gun reform in the wake of last month's school shooting in Nashville. Protesters flooded the state capitol on Thursday as the legislators were set to take three resolutions filed by GOP lawmakers Monday seeking to expel Reps Gloria Johnson of Knoxville, Justin Jones of Nashville, and Justin Pearson of Memphis, a step the state house has taken only twice since the 1860s. There comes a time where people get sick and tired of being sick and tired, Jones said in a speech prior to a vote on his expulsion. And so my colleagues, I say that what we did was an act in our responsibility as legislators to serve and give voice to the grievances of people who have been silenced. We call for you to ban assault weapons, he said, and you respond with an assault on democracy. Jones added, how can you bring dishonor to an already dishonorable House? The three lawmakers led a protest on the House floor last Thursday without being recognized, CNN affiliate WSMV reported, using a bullhorn as demonstrators at the state capitol called on lawmakers to take action to prevent further gun violence after a mass shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville left three 9-year-olds and three adults dead. Each lawmaker was removed from their committee assignments following last week's demonstrations. Discussion Thursday began with Republicans, who control the House 75 to 23, playing footage of the protests last week, showing Jones, Johnson, and Pearson standing in the well of the House and using the bullhorn to address their colleagues and protesters in the gallery. Democrats were opposed to having the footage played, arguing it was unfair because they had not seen the video themselves and did not know the extent to which it had been edited. Well, that seems kind of dumb. I'm assuming everyone kind of knows what sort of happened. I mean, all these people are state lawmakers. They should all have some sort of an idea. It's morally insane that a week after a mass shooting took 6 precious lives in my community here in Nashville, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, their first action is not to take actions to rein in this proliferation of weapons of war in our streets, but it's to expel their colleagues for standing with our constituents, Jones told CNN this morning on Wednesday. This is not just about losing my job, he added, saying constituents of the three representatives are being taken and silenced by a party that's acting like authoritarians. In the last 157 years, the House expelled only 2 lawmakers, which requires a two-thirds vote. In 1980, after a representative was found guilty of accepting a bribe while in office, and in 2016, when another was expelled over allegations of sexual harassment. This week, Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton, a Republican, said the three Democrats' actions are and always will be unacceptable, and broke several rules of decorum and procedure on the House floor. Sexton said peaceful protesters have always been welcome to the Capitol to have their voices heard on any issue, but the actions of the Democratic lawmakers have detracted from that process. In effect, those actions took away the voices of the protesters, the focus on the 6 victims who lost their lives, and the families who lost their loved ones, Sexton said in a series of tweets on Monday. We cannot allow the actions of the three members to distract us from protecting our children. We will get through this together and will require talking about all solutions, Sexton said. During the discussion Thursday, Democratic Rep. Joe Towns called the move to expel the nuclear option. You never use a sledgehammer to kill a gnat, Towns said. We should not go to the extreme of expelling our members for fighting for what many of the citizens want to happen, whether you agree with it or not. Well, that's not really the issue. I think the issue comes down to the culture war, and from the next article that I have from the Post Millennial, we'll kind of see that. But for now, we'll just kind of keep staying focused on this one article. What we have essentially is after the stuff that happened in January 6th, Democrats were talking about expelling members of Congress, even though they had nothing to do with the protests that occurred. Now, let's go and talk a little bit about what happened here in Tennessee. You had 3 lawmakers who participated in the protests that wound up taking over the Capitol, and they led protesters into the building and into the gallery and started causing a disruption. So, in that context, you brought the protesters into the building and you disrupted the floor intentionally. And so what this essentially boils down to is a tit for tat. And I think you can kind of see that going on with Trump. I mean, there's been some news stories about how basically Biden's going to be indicted. Let's Google that real quick. Biden indict NPR. Biden's silence on Trump's indictment. Democrats cheer contrast between Biden and Trump. Biden family investigation. Post represent old Biden clip as related to Trump case. Oh well, I can't find it right now. But I'd seen something earlier basically talking about how there's going to be a whole thing where some guy from Kentucky is going to be indicting basically the Biden campaign or how it ran his campaign or something like that. And it's essentially a tit for tat. I wish I had pulled up. Let's try one more time. Biden Kentucky indictment. There we go. New York Post. At least 2 Republican DAs went to prosecute the Bidens. Apparently this is coming from Rep. James Comer. So yeah, at least 2 local GOP prosecutors are looking at ways to charge President Biden and his family amid Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's prosecution of former President Donald Trump. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer revealed Wednesday. I had 2 calls yesterday, one from a county attorney in Kentucky and one from a county attorney in Tennessee. They were Republican, obviously. Both states are heavily Republican. They want to know if there are ways they can go after the Bidens now. So, hey, look at that. So we're now down to a tit for tat in politics, where essentially the justice system is being weaponized in order to get whatever people want. The Democrats in New York decided they were going to go after Trump, and now the Republicans in Tennessee and Kentucky are going to go after them. And then you have this thing going on in Tennessee where basically you had these 3 Democrats. To put it simply, they made an ass of themselves. I don't know how else to put it, but they got on stage and they made a giant ruckus during what's supposed to be a formal proceeding. And so they're being voted on to be expelled. Now, granted, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but the point remains. This is a political tit for tat. You're in a heavily red state. They don't like you to begin with, and you're advocating for things that the majority of people in Tennessee don't like anyway. And this we saw from Axios. Let's pull it up real quick. Axios. American political migration. Yeah, well, I can't find it, but I had it pulled up yesterday, and I was talking about it. Basically, people are still moving because of economic and personal reasons, but when they do move, the second most important reason, or the reason they factor in, is what area am I moving into? What are the politics and culture of that area? So red states will get redder, and blue states will get bluer. And so let's move it on to let's see, I had the story pulled up. I think it's from Washington Examiner. There we go. With new supermajority, North Carolina Republicans filed bills aimed at transgender people. So this is a story from Washington Examiner, and it basically talks about how recently there was a Democrat woman who was in the legislature of North Carolina. She switched parties, became a Republican. The Republicans now have a supermajority in the North Carolina legislature, and they're basically just filing laws so that they can try to get laws passed despite the Democratic governor. Essentially, it's a veto-proof majority. So we'll see how that works out. But basically, yeah, Republicans are going to pass some things that Republicans like. Democrats are going to get pissed, and you're going to have 2 cultures that are going to be pushed through politics at the state level. So essentially, if you're a Democrat in North Carolina, well, unless you manage to retake the state, the state's politics will not reflect your values, and you'd be happier just moving to a blue state like New York. Same is true for Republicans in California. It's not getting any better for you. You might as well move to, I don't know, Texas, where things are red. That's just how it's kind of going. Idaho from Timcast.com. We have a story from Timcast.com talking about how Idaho is criminalizing taking minors out of state for abortions. So basically, Idaho's doubling down on its abortion stance, where we don't like abortions. And if you take a child, if you're pregnant and you leave the state to get an abortion, that's still criminal. The abortion trafficking provisions in the bill seeks only to prevent unemancipated minor girls from being taken across state lines for an abortion without the knowledge of her parents, said Governor Brad Little. So, it's kind of limited when you look at it in that context, but this is kind of the start. I anticipate eventually this is going to expand to basically all women who want to leave the state for an abortion. Not allowed. I mean, you could probably still do it, but I mean, I would suggest you don't come back to the state after you do that, because you're probably going to criminally charge you. Now they'll criminalize people who are helping minor girls who are trying to get out, but yeah, right now it's pretty weak compared to what the Republican position really is. You can't help a minor girl leave the state without the knowledge of her parents. So if you help a minor girl leave the state for an abortion, but her parents know about it, it's fine. Yeah, something tells me the Republican base is going to say that's not good enough. This is just the start. It'll eventually keep going. All right, let's move it on. Post-millennial, going back to what happened in Tennessee. 3 Tennessee Democrat lawmakers to be expelled from House after disrupting session to join with protesters. Now, this one was interesting because it had some stuff in there that I had trouble corroborating. We'll just get into it. Basically the same stuff from what happened from the CNN article. Let's see. While GOP voted on the proposed expulsions, protesters shouted from the galleries, and some representatives got into scuffles with one another, burning in session. State troopers had to be called in to calm things down. Moving on. Those are the ones who are in trouble. They've used the bullhorn to cause a disruption. GOP is calling it insurrection, which, yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, this is what happened on January 6th was worse, I'd say, because one, you had people who were fighting with cops. As far as I know, I don't know if any of these Democrat activists were fighting with cops, but I mean, you're still disrupting formal proceedings in order to force your worldview on people who don't really want it. They're calling GOP fascists. What else is new? In the end, the resolutions were passed along party lines, 72 to 23. The final decisions will be made on Thursday after Johnson, Jones, and Pearson have had a chance to defend themselves. So yeah, the resolution is passed. I'm not really sure how it works out from there, but it sounds like they might probably going to get expelled. Let's keep going. Something in here that was kind of interesting. We've always been welcome peaceful protesters, and as the Tennessean... Oh, here we go. So, as the Tennessean reports, Johnson called the situation unprecedented and utterly ridiculous, and said she would consider filing a lawsuit if she and her colleagues are officially expelled on Thursday, pointing out that a number of other representatives had been allowed to remain after scandals far worse than disrupting proceedings were revealed. Good luck with your lawsuit. It'll probably go through Republican-controlled courts, and so therefore you probably won't win unless the federal government steps in. But then you have the federal government literally taking over state governments, which will piss a lot of people off, and so that doesn't really help anything. Anyhow, here's her statement. We had a child molester on the floor for years. They helped him get reelected and did nothing to expel him, Johnson said. We've had members urinate in each other's chairs. We've had members illegally prescribe drugs to their cousin mistress, and nothing happened. But talk on the floor without permission and you'll get expelled. And maybe all this is true. I have no idea. I haven't looked that closely into it, but that's not the point. The point is your politics are not welcome in the state of Tennessee. And that is a sad thing to say because people are becoming more politically intolerant of each other. But it's true. You made a big stink out of the fact that you don't like the Republican stance on not assault rifles, because they're not assault rifles. AR stands for Armor Light. It is an unfortunate naming convention that confuses a lot of people, but it's not an assault rifle. But at any point, the fact remains that Republicans are pro-gun, Democrats are anti-gun. They are the minority, but they're fighting for positions that aren't even popular with the majority of Tennessee. But it might be, but even if it's popular in their district, they still have to represent it. But you know that they're never going to vote for this in a million years. It's just a giant media stunt that they pulled off, and they made a giant stink out of themselves. And so what you essentially have is they're going to get expelled, or at least that's the way it looks like. I wish politics were more peaceful than this, but I don't know, this is the reality. Anyhow, that's that pretty much concludes things for this video. Please consider liking or subscribing. I like doing these videos out of a hobby. I like talking about what's going on in the news, and yeah. If you have any comments, feel free to share them. Thanks, and stay safe. Bye.